Afghanistan, a nation entirely devoid of coastlines, completely landlocked by its neighbors. To understand the complex history of this nation, one must first look at its formidable geography. Over 75% of the country is consumed by a massive, unforgiving mountainous terrain. At its heart stands the Hindu Kush, a mountain range so vast and intimidating
that it acts as an impenetrable natural wall, slicing the country into distinct, isolated regions.
For thousands of years, navigating these high-altitude passes was a matter of life and death.
These towering heights created a natural fortress, shielding the valleys within and repeatedly breaking the will of invading armies.
But these peaks are also the source of life. From the high-altitude glaciers, vital rivers are born. They carve their way through the barren stone, providing thin but crucial lifelines of water. This water flows down to the arid plains, sustaining agriculture in an otherwise brutal environment. In the extreme northeast, the geography forms the Wakhan Corridor, a narrow, dramatic valley touching the borders of China. Yet, hidden within this rugged harshness are pockets of breathtaking natural wonder.
Deep blue lakes, acting like sapphires, set in rough, ancient stone.
This extreme environment dictates everything. It decided where communities could be built, and how they remained fiercely independent, protected by their mountainous isolation.
The mountains cannot be reasoned with. They demand absolute respect. To understand Afghanistan, one must first recognize the raw, undeniable power of its earth, a fortress built by nature itself. But terrain is only half the battle. The sky above holds its own extreme tests. Cut off from the tempering effects of any ocean, the nation experiences a brutal continental climate. It is a realm of absolute extremes, swinging violently between freezing ice and scorching fire. Winter in the highlands is not merely a season. It is a relentless test of survival.
Temperatures plummet far below freezing, and massive snowfalls blanket the high altitudes. Rivers freeze solid in their tracks, and the cascading waterfalls turn into silent, jagged pillars of ice. For months on end, entire regions become completely isolated from the rest of the world. Buried under the snowdrifts, the land slumbers in a deep, unforgiving freeze. But as the earth tilts, the brutal cold surrenders to a rapid, violent thaw. Melting snows trigger sudden flash floods, sending torrents of water crashing through the dry canyons. Spring brings a fleeting moment of breathtaking beauty, painting the valleys in vibrant, brief greens and wild blooms.
Yet, this green vanishes quickly as the ruthless summer arrives. In the southern and western plains, the sun bakes the earth until it cracks and turns to dust. The vast expanses of the Registan desert transform into an ocean of blazing red sand.
Temperatures soar well above 100 degrees Fahrenheit, creating shimmering mirages over the scorched plains. And with the summer heat comes the notorious wind of 120 days.
Fierce, unyielding gales sweep across the dry earth, picking up millions of tons of sand and dirt. Massive dust storms swallow the landscape whole, turning the bright day into a suffocating, orange twilight. This extreme duality of ice and fire ensures that only the strongest can endure here. Yet, despite the punishing climate, this land became the heartbeat of human civilization's most legendary trade routes. Long before modern borders were drawn, this rugged land served a much greater purpose. It was the beating heart of the ancient Silk Road.
Merchants traveled thousands of miles to trade precious gems, like the legendary deep blue lapis lazuli, alongside exotic spices, fine silks, and rare metals. Massive stone inns, known as caravanserais, dotted the landscape, offering refuge to exhausted travelers.
Because of this immense wealth flowing through its valleys, great cities rose from the dust.
It became a profound melting pot of art and philosophy, where Greek, Persian, and Indian influences merged seamlessly. The towering cliffs of Bamiyan once housed colossal statues, standing as silent guardians over the trade routes.
Empires grew incredibly rich off the taxation and control of these vital mountain passes. Treasures of unimaginable beauty, like the legendary Bactrian gold, were forged in these ancient kingdoms.
Magnificent minarets and architectural wonders pierced the sky, symbols of faith and immense power.
The alignment of the 5 planets proves the mandate of heaven is upon us. But the comet's path contradicts the ancient texts. For centuries, Afghanistan was a beacon of prosperity and a bridge between worlds. But such strategic importance and boundless wealth come at a heavy, bloody price. It became the ultimate prize for every ambitious conqueror. Those who wished to control the world knew they first had to conquer these mountains. The golden age of trade would soon give way to an endless cycle of invasion. The heart of the Silk Road was about to transform into something far more dangerous. It was destined to become the graveyard of empires.
Because of its location, Afghanistan has been invaded more times than almost any other place on Earth.
It is a land that has tempted the greatest conquerors in human history. Over 2 millennia ago, Alexander the Great marched his mighty armies into these valleys.
He expected a quick victory. Instead, he faced years of brutal, exhausting guerrilla warfare. The steep mountains and fierce local resistance bogged down his unstoppable war machine. Centuries later, the Mongol hordes of Genghis Khan swept through, leaving unprecedented devastation in their wake.
They destroyed entire cities and irrigation systems, turning prosperous regions into wastelands.
Yet, even the Mongols could not hold the mountains forever. The terrain itself always fought back.
In the 19th century, the British Empire, at the absolute height of its global power, marched in. Seeking to counter Russian influence, they triggered the First Anglo-Afghan War. It resulted in one of the most catastrophic military defeats in British colonial history. An entire retreating army of thousands was swallowed by the freezing winter and relentless ambushes. They learned a bloody lesson. Gaining ground in Afghanistan is easy. Keeping it is impossible. Empires would march in with arrogance, heavily armed, and supremely confident. And years later, they would retreat, broken, bankrupted, and bleeding. The Afghan strategy was always the same. Use the brutal geography as their ultimate weapon. Wait out the invaders. Let the winter, the mountains, and the isolation do the heavy lifting. This relentless cycle earned the nation its most famous, chilling moniker: the Graveyard of Empires. But the 20th century would bring a new kind of superpower and a new kind of war. And once again, Afghanistan's geography placed it directly in the crosshairs of global superpowers.
In the winter of 1979, the Soviet Union launched a massive military intervention. Thousands of heavily armored vehicles rolled into the rugged valleys, expecting to secure the nation quickly. But they fundamentally underestimated the Afghan terrain and the unyielding spirit of the mountains.
Advanced technology, heavy armor, and air superiority were severely neutralized by the deep canyons. Local resistance fighters utilized ancient caves and high-altitude passes to launch devastating ambushes.
Soon, the conflict escalated into a massive proxy war. Billions of dollars in foreign weapons flooded into the remote valleys to bleed the Soviet war machine. For nearly a decade, the land was subjected to unimaginable destruction. Entire agricultural systems were bombed, and countless villages were reduced to ash and rubble.
The beautiful valleys were deeply scarred by millions of landmines, an invisible, lingering terror.
Millions of people were forced to flee their ancestral homes, creating one of the largest refugee crises in history.
Finally, in 1989, battered and financially exhausted, the Soviet army withdrew.
Afghanistan had once again lived up to its title as the Graveyard of Empires.
But there was no peace to be found. The superpower retreated, but they left behind a shattered nation.
The power vacuum plunged the country into a brutal and chaotic civil war.
Generations would grow up knowing nothing but the deafening sounds of conflict. The world moved on, but the scars etched into the Afghan earth remained deep and unhealed. To the outside world, this land became synonymous with war. But the older generation remembered a different reality. Before the decades of unrelenting war, there was a golden era, a time that feels almost mythical today. In the mid-20th century, Afghanistan experienced a profound period of peace and modernization. The capital city, Kabul, was a vibrant, thriving metropolis, often referred to as the Paris of Central Asia.
It was a city of lush gardens, grand fountains, and bustling, optimistic energy.
Kabul University was considered one of the finest institutions in the region.
It was a hub of intellectual freedom, where scholars gathered to discuss philosophy, science, and the future. And music filled the airwaves. A unique blend of traditional Afghan melodies and Western pop echoed through the valleys.
Cinemas showed the latest films from Hollywood and Bollywood, and theaters hosted vibrant cultural performances.
Tourists from Europe and America traveled the famous hippie trail, finding a welcoming and safe haven in Afghanistan.
It was a time of immense social progress. Fashion beautifully blended the modern world with rich traditions.
Infrastructure was booming. New hospitals, highways, and hydroelectric dams were being constructed. The national airline, Ariana, flew gracefully to capital cities all over the globe, a symbol of a connected nation.
There was a profound sense of hope, a belief that the country was marching confidently toward a bright future. But history is fragile, and the geopolitical forces circling the nation were growing darker. In the late 1970s, a series of political coups would abruptly shatter this delicate peace. The Golden Age collapsed, giving way to the dark storm of the Cold War and the decades of tragedy that followed. The beautiful boulevards would soon be torn apart by tank treads, and the universities emptied by conflict. For those who lived through it, the memory of a peaceful Kabul remains deeply etched in their hearts. It is a heartbreaking reminder of what was lost, and a vision of what the nation was truly capable of. As the physical world crumbled, the people turned inward, relying on the ancient bonds that had always held them together. To look at Afghanistan is to look at a complex, woven tapestry. It is not a monolith, but a rich mosaic of cultures. For millennia, the formidable mountains did more than just keep invaders out. They kept distinct communities isolated within. This geographical isolation birthed a nation of over 40 million people, divided into dozens of unique ethnic groups. In the south and east, the vast deserts and rugged hills belong primarily to the Pashtuns, the largest ethnic group. Historically the dominant political force, their culture is deeply rooted in poetry, fierce independence, and tribal loyalty. Moving north into the lush, emerald valleys of Panjshir and beyond, we find the ancestral lands of the Tajiks. Speaking Dari, a dialect of Persian, their heritage is heavily intertwined with ancient Persian literature, art, and agriculture. They are the mountain farmers, the scholars, and the merchants who historically connected the northern trade routes. In the severe, mountainous center of the country lies the Hazarajat, the traditional homeland of the Hazara people. Believed to be descendants of the Silk Road travelers and Mongol forces, they possess a completely unique cultural identity. Despite facing centuries of severe marginalization, their resilience and dedication to education and art remain unbreakable. Further north, where the mountains finally yield to the flat steppes, live the Uzbeks and Turkmens. Their culture echoes the great nomadic horsemen of the Central Asian steppes. They are master weavers, creating world-renowned carpets, and possess an unparalleled equestrian heritage. Alongside them are the Baloch, the Nuristanis, the Pashai, and many more, each with their own language and music. Despite differences in language and ancestry, they are united by a shared landscape and shared hardships. Building a unified national identity out of such diverse tribal loyalties has been the greatest challenge in modern Afghan history. Like the rivers flowing from different mountains to form a single stream, their destinies are permanently intertwined. In a land where the central government has historically been weak, another force has kept the society intact. It is an ancient, unwritten code of honor, a law older than borders and stronger than empires. In a land where empires rise and fall and modern laws frequently collapse, how does society survive? For the Pashtun tribes, and heavily influencing the rest of the nation, survival depends on an ancient, unwritten code. It is called Pashtunwali. It is not recorded in any official law book, nor enforced by any police. Yet, it is the invisible pillar that holds the entire social fabric together, a strict code of honor, duty, and survival. The first and most famous pillar of this code is Melmastia, the obligation of absolute hospitality. Under this law, a host must offer tea, food, and shelter to any guest, regardless of their race, religion, or past. Even if an enemy knocks on your door seeking refuge, you are bound by honor to protect and feed them. This leads to Nanawatai, the concept of asylum. It is a sacred guarantee of sanctuary against all odds. To hand over someone who has sought asylum in your home is considered an ultimate, unforgivable disgrace. But Pashtunwali is not just about kindness. It is equally about strict justice and consequence. The Pillar of Badal demands justice or revenge. It dictates that a wrong must be righted, no matter how long it takes. An insult or injury cannot go unpunished. Debts of blood can be passed down through generations. To resolve these intense disputes, the community relies on the jirga, a council of respected tribal elders.
Sitting in a circle, they negotiate peace, arrange compensations, and prevent endless cycles of vengeance. Above all else sits Nang, or honor. A person without honor is considered socially dead. Honor governs how one defends their family, their property, and their nation against foreign invaders. It is this exact code that explains why foreign armies have never been able to subdue the Afghan countryside. To surrender to an invader is a violation of Nang. Therefore, they will fight until the very end. Pashtunwali is harsh, unyielding, and ancient. But in a land defined by chaos, it is the anchor of stability. This fierce independence and warrior spirit is not just a philosophy. It is physically manifested in their national sport. The fierce independence of the Afghan people is not just a philosophy. It is a physical, untamed energy. Nowhere is this warrior spirit more visibly expressed than in their deep, ancestral connection to the horse. For centuries, to master the horse was to master the harsh landscape itself. This bond gave birth to Buzkashi, the fierce and ancient national sport of Afghanistan. There are no gentle rules here. It is a brutal, high-speed clash of strength, agility, and sheer willpower.
The goal is simple: seize the heavy target from the dirt, fight off dozens of rivals, and drop it into a scoring circle. Yet, a nation defined by such rugged toughness is also capable of producing art of breathtaking delicacy.
When the dust settles and the winter snows block the passes, a quiet, meticulous art form takes over.
Carpet weaving. An ancient tradition passed down silently through generations.
Using natural dyes extracted from roots, fruits, and minerals, the bleak landscape is transformed into vibrant colors. Millions of individual knots are tied by hand to create intricate, mesmerizing geometric patterns. It is a painstaking process. A single, high-quality carpet can take many months or even years to complete. The world-famous deep red carpets, featuring the iconic elephant foot motifs, tell stories of nomadic heritage. These rugs are a profound metaphor for the Afghan people themselves.
Born from harsh conditions, yet incredibly durable, beautiful, and possessing immense cultural value.
Exported across the globe, they are highly sought-after treasures in the world's most elegant homes. They bring warmth and color to the cold, stone walls of the mountain fortresses. From the chaotic fury of the galloping Clydesdale horse to the silent, patient knotting of a thread.
The spirit of Afghanistan is a masterpiece of contrasts. And this spirit extends even to the soil itself.
Looking at the rugged, arid mountains, it is hard to imagine this land yielding anything but stone.
Yet, thanks to ancient, ingenious underground irrigation systems, agriculture is the very backbone of the nation. Afghanistan produces some of the finest, most flavorful fruits on the planet, like the legendary Kandahar pomegranates.
Sweet melons, crisp apples, and an incredible variety of grapes flourish in the sun-drenched valleys.
Dried fruits and premium nuts, pistachios, almonds, and dried apricots are vital exports.
These harvests have sustained the population through centuries of isolation and war.
But farming here is a constant, grueling battle against drought, extreme weather, and lack of modern infrastructure.
However, hidden within this dusty soil is a crop that rivals the price of precious metals.
It is known as the red gold. Saffron, the most expensive and sought-after spice in the entire world. The spice is derived exclusively from the 3 tiny, crimson-red stigmas found inside the saffron crocus.
The harvest is incredibly delicate. It must be done entirely by hand, perfectly timed before the sun rises.
It takes over 150,000 individual flowers to produce just 1 single kilogram of saffron spice. Afghan saffron is consistently ranked as some of the highest quality in the world, prized for its intense color and aroma.
A tiny pinch is enough to transform a dish into a culinary masterpiece, or brew a rich, golden tea.
Economically, it represents a massive beacon of hope, a highly lucrative, legal alternative for local farmers.
Exported to the finest kitchens globally, it showcases the beautiful, productive side of the country.
The saffron flower is the perfect symbol of the Afghan spirit, delicate in appearance, yet thriving in the harshest conditions.
But while agriculture relies on the topsoil, an even greater wealth slumbers deep beneath the earth.
A staggering treasure of untouched minerals. A trillion-dollar secret waiting in the dark. For decades, the world has viewed Afghanistan as a land of profound poverty and endless conflict.
A harsh environment where the surface offers very little to sustain modern economic growth.
But this is the greatest paradox of the nation. The true wealth does not lie on the surface.
Afghanistan sits upon one of the richest, entirely untouched mineral deposits on planet Earth. Geological surveys estimate there is between $1 to $3 trillion of mineral wealth sleeping in the dark. Beneath the ancient ruins of Mes Aynak lies one of the largest untapped copper reserves in the world.
Vast mountain ranges in the center of the country are made almost entirely of high-grade iron ore.
But it is not just traditional metals. The mountains hold massive veins of rare earth elements.
And the crown jewel of this subterranean empire is lithium. Lithium is the crucial component powering the modern world, from smartphones to electric vehicles.
Internal memos have referred to Afghanistan as the potential Saudi Arabia of lithium.
The materials required to drive the next century of global technology are locked beneath these valleys. So, why does a nation sitting on a trillion-dollar gold mine remain trapped in a cycle of poverty? The answer lies in the total absence of modern infrastructure. There are no heavy railways to transport the ore.
There are no deep-water ports, and the power grid is severely insufficient for industrial-scale mining.
Most importantly, decades of relentless conflict and instability have terrified foreign investors. The trillion-dollar secret remains securely locked away by the very mountains that created it.
As the global transition to green energy accelerates, the demand for these minerals will only skyrocket.
Earth holds the key to the nation's financial salvation, or perhaps the catalyst for its next great conflict.
But while the future of the economy sleeps underground, the harsh reality of the present plays out on the surface. In August 2021, the world watched in stunned silence as the pages of history turned violently once again. The geopolitical landscape shifted overnight, bringing a new reality to millions.
Today, the nation operates under a strict, unyielding interpretation of ancient law.
This profound shift has deeply altered the fabric of society, locking away many aspects of modern public life. The silence is perhaps loudest in the empty classrooms. Education and opportunities, especially for girls and women, face severe restrictions. Dreams and ambitions have been put on an indefinite hold, waiting in the shadows of a complex political landscape. Internationally, the country finds itself deeply isolated. Foreign assets remain frozen, and the modern economy has grounded to a halt. This economic freeze has triggered a staggering humanitarian crisis. As the brutal winter descends from the Hindu Kush, the test of survival becomes desperately real. Yet, if history has proven one thing with absolute certainty, it is the unbreakable resilience of this land. Afghanistan is not merely a tragic headline on a news broadcast. It is the ancient crossroads of humanity. It is a land of profound heritage, where the echoes of the Silk Road still whisper through the valleys.
It is a complex tapestry of diverse tribes, woven together by an unwavering code of honor and hospitality.
A nation defined by a fierce warrior spirit that has repeatedly humbled the greatest empires in history. Like the saffron flower blooming in the harsh desert, the spirit of its people refuses to be extinguished. The mountains stand eternal. They have witnessed the rise and fall of kings.
Whatever the future holds, the rivers will continue to flow, and the earth will endure. The next chapter of this incredible nation remains unwritten, a future resting in the hands of its resilient people.
This is Afghanistan, the fortress at the crossroads of the world.
Thank you for watching.